Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Gifted Creative Podcast. I'm Lillian Skinner. Today, we're going to talk about critical thinking and how our critical thinking is our connection-based thinking. Now, we have this idea that critical thinking is missing in our society, and I agree, but I want you to understand why. The way our systems, our institutions develop us puts us into our dissective thinking. And we call that critical thinking, the breaking down of things, but it's not. It's really only half of what critical thinking is. Critical thinking is trying to understand the whole picture. It's trying to find root cause analysis. It's trying to understand cause and effect. This is something that growing up, I naturally did. I am constantly trying to understand the whole picture because that is how I am wired to be. When I was younger, when I did it, I would get in trouble. And I could never understand why I was getting in trouble because it seemed like they were talking out of both sides of their mouths. And this is what they do. It's a double bind. Gregory Bateson talked about it. It's where our systems say one thing to you. They say, we want you to critically think, but then they prevent you from doing it at the actual body level, which is where connection-based intelligence is and where the bulk of our critical thinking is going to come from, because critical thinking really requires us to look at the environment and then compare to what we're being told or what we're reading and double check that they both agree. I'm very sensitive. I took a lot of inputs in from the environment. So at a very young age, I was aware that there was massive discrepancies between what I was being told by my parents in school and by church was very different than what I was actually experiencing. But I wasn't allowed to say it. My parents were very clear, children do not speak unless spoken to, and then you answer the question that you were given. I grew up with this, why does none of this make sense? And also understanding clearly that it didn't really matter if I thought it didn't make sense. It mattered only that the adults in the room were happy. Because we're so sensitive, I don't really need to punish or discipline my children. And I think that's maybe one of the things that most people are not aware of. Our children, the ones that are twice exceptional, the ones that have really high awareness of the world, they don't really need to be punished. They need to be explained to. I just needed somebody to tell me why things were the way they were, so I could be like, oh, well, now it makes sense. Now I will never upset that apple cart because I understand it. But when you don't tell me, it feels like you're being dishonest. The problem is that our systems are full of people who are actually fractured in their thinking. They're thinking in dissection. They don't actually question what they're told. They have given that up a long time ago. I'm going to try to explain why this is and why it's so important for the future we face, because we're walking into an era where not a lot is going to make sense. So you have to make it make sense. You have to pull the whole picture together. You have to make it make sense so that you can keep functioning. Because if you don't, you are essentially running into reality fracture, because the system's reality and nature's reality are going to conflict. And I think we already see this. So I want people to be aware why they're saying critical thinking is so important without even understanding why it's so important, because they really can't fathom it. I think that the cognitive people in our systems are very good at researching. They're very good at figuring out what they're handed, but they can't actually expand. They have given up their connection-based intelligence, which is the intelligence of the body, which is a bigger, wider perspective. I'm really looking for people who do understand what I'm saying, which is why I built my institute and invited people to me that are creative, because whole picture creatives understand. They give each other full feedback loops. They give each other connection intelligence. They give each other dissection intelligence. They give each other creative intelligence. We're getting cultivated at such a profound level. Our intelligence exponentially grows because it's our whole intelligence. Nowhere in the system are you getting the whole intelligence. You're getting small parts, and then you have to go out into the world and then try to connect it to learned experience. But that's really not what they want you to do. So they're kind of working against it. We're so dumbed down in our system today, and with AI, it will get so much worse. I know they need this. I know I can't go into the world and deal with it being so dumbed down, so simple, so ridiculously detached from reality. The cost is really high. It is our lives. It is our well-being. It is our mental health. It is our physical health. It is everything. So we have to do this for our children. I don't know how long the system's going to last. I really don't think it's going to be past a decade. So because it's not going to be past a decade, I have children I need to make sure have a continuity plan to move past it. My research has been on how we use our whole intelligence so that we can do that. My institute is offering classes that preserve children's whole intelligence. So let's start with what critical intelligence is. Now, connection-based intelligence is the ability to connect things. I mean, if you see something outside, you know that it's connected to this biome, you know that it's connected to this particular type of tree. It could be a bird, and those birds are sapsuckers and they like particularly sappy trees, and it connects it to the whole environment. Our systems do not connect in the whole environment. And you can see this in the actual vocabulary of critical thinking. Critical thinking has many meanings, and they're sort of braided together and then never ever really discussed at how they don't even mean the same thing. When I think of critical thinking, I think of necessary, vital, right? That's the very thing we need. We need critical thinking to survive what's coming. And when I think of it in our systems, they think critical thinking gets more like discerning. I think that's what they're trying to say. But it's the ability to tell what's true, what's false. Essentially, it's a negative term. And in a negative way, it's like you're saying, I don't know that I believe this. But our school systems, our education systems, our medical systems, our mental health systems, they look at it as negatives. We have to realize our systems are really negative in a way because it is dissection-based. So it's always going to pick the negative turn. And I wish somebody had just told me that as a child, because if they had told me that, I would have done so much better in school, because then I would have realized, oh, just go with the breakdown negative. Whereas connection is positive. The other meaning for critical thinking is sort of like a crisis point, a decisive moment where we have to figure out what the perception is. And then, of course, I said before, fault finding. The ones the system sees are the fault finding, and they sort of use the discerning. But again, critical thinking has many meanings. It means necessary, vital, the thinking required for survival, orientation, judgment, and action. Discerning, evaluative, the ability to tell whether it's truthful, harmful, useful, coherent, incoherent, safe, unsafe. We have crisis point, decisive, the moment where perception matters because consequences are forming. And then we have fault finding, negative, the socially punished version. You're questioning too much. You need to learn to accept. You need to learn to trust. And this is what I had Claude doing to me recently when I was actually doing research for this particular podcast. The school usually advertises we teach children to evaluate meaning. So that's the second one. They use it as discerning. But they're really only talking about dissection. They're not talking about true full picture discerning, using your connection intelligence to see the whole picture, and then using your discerning intelligence to separate the noise out. As a child, I was being punished because I saw critical thinking as the first one, which was necessary, like this is critical, we have to take care of it right away, or we have to understand it clearly, or I saw it as the crisis point. And those two things were wrong. I was told I was negative. They perceive a bad attitude in many ways. We are being forced to perform because those are the children who are broken. So we want to prevent our children from moving to that because they then lose their critical thinking focused outward. And we want to keep them focused inward because they're using their data from their environmental intelligence. So critical thinking in the vital sense is not anyone being negative. It's somebody detecting a break in reality contact, a break in their awareness of what's really going on and what's being presented. The child in school is taught to apply their discerning intelligence to the small picture they're giving, their worksheet, their paper they're working on, whatever they're doing right then and there. If they haven't had their intelligence broken, fractured, their attention is still there. So what happens is when they're reading whatever they're supposed to be doing, their mind wanders to connection because the body's in connection intelligence sort of takes it all over. One of the issues with our school system is that they want our attention completely on that task all the time. That's a very hard thing for a whole picture thinker because they're trying to use their intelligence to see the whole. They're trying to use their intelligence to survive, essentially. Our school systems don't want you to survive. They want you to give up your connection intelligence, which is your self-protection and your ability to navigate reality. They want you to give that up. They don't want you to self-protect, which is probably why we have all these issues with women and small children being abused because they're trusting too blindly. I never got that, and I can't tell you how many times it saved me. So I do think it's important for our children to not be told they need to just blindly accept. They should be asking questions or they should be allowed to try to understand it fully because that's part of critical thinking. That's part of really cultivating their full intelligence. But we don't allow that. The teachers are actually stuck in their smallest and picture intelligence. So a lot of times they don't actually know if a child comes along and is asking a bigger question, they can't answer it. I used to get in trouble because I would try to connect it to my real life experience. They'd be like, no, we don't do that. You do not question, you memorize. I only tried it once each year and then I didn't try it again. They want to control the student's attention. They want to control their focus. They want to control their thinking. Control, focus, attention, and thinking. If they get those three things, you are now a trained dog who they can send out to do the paths that they won't, and you will not diverge to check out other animals while you're sniffing for drugs. You'll just focus on that. I really wish people could understand that that's literally what schools are trying to train into our children, Because if they saw it that way, they'd understand how narrow focused is and how detrimental it is. And also, AI does that. And AI is very good at that. So why should I even bother with that? There's plenty of people in this world that are actually that small picture, especially because they've been conditioned that way. So let them do that. They can use those jobs. The rest of us that are more whole picture or more big picture, we need to be focusing on the other things because clearly our systems have not done that. And that is partially or maybe completely why they're all fracturing and breaking right now, because when you don't focus on the environment, when all your metrics do not include what the future is or the environment, things break down eventually. Every relationship will break down because you're dissecting it. If you dissect everything, you're killing it. We live in essentially a dead society, and it's calling itself living, even though it's falling apart, and it calls that falling apart complexity, but it's not complex at all. If you dissect everything down, you kill it, and eventually it dies too. If you take a whole organism and if you proceed to basically dissect every capillary they have, eventually the person dies. They might not die for a while because we have millions and billions in all those connections in our body. But if you just start dissecting it and you just slice here, slice there, pulling it apart and putting some sort of stopgap in there so you can pull a little blood off each time as if you're parasitic, essentially, because that's basically how it functions. Eventually, you kill the system, you kill the body, you kill whatever living things were in them. And I think we're there right now. And I think we're actually headed towards mass psychosis. And this podcast is sort of addressing that, but it's also addressing the fact that this is a really simple source. It comes from school, it comes from critical thinking, and it's prevention of us from truly doing it while also saying we need it so much. And that is part of the dissection of head and body. If you say you need critical thinking, but your connection intelligence has been erased, which is what our society has done, you can't even see where it goes, where it's done, how it's done, what it really means. So you're discerning like this place doesn't have critical thinking, but you don't even really truly know what critical thinking is, or everybody knows how to dissect. What they don't know how to do is discern. Everybody knows how to dissect in a small picture way in the system because our systems train into you relentlessly what dissection is. But dissection and discernment are two different things. Discernment is taking the connections, putting them together, and then dissecting out the noise. That's the discernment part. If you don't have a whole picture and you're dissecting out the noise, you're dissecting out the noise in a fragment, and then that fragment gets smaller and more broken and more broken and more broken until it's dead. School does this in a very specific way. It attacks the loop that we have for our intelligence. It's the salience network. It's anchored in the anterior insula and anterior cingulate. And we attack the specific one that's not coming from your head to your body because that's how they're conditioning us. We're attacking the one that comes from your body to your head. And they do that with shame. Salience network, they're attacking it with shame and severing it from your body to your head, trying to grab your attention. The salience network determines what's important. It's the discerning of what to focus on. We keep us under stress in school so that our salience network loses its flexibility. And they don't want it particularly to have our body come up to our head because our body is telling us that's not okay, that's kind of evil, that's wrong. This is our self-protection, it's our environmental navigation. It literally is the free will part of our intelligence. So when we lose our body's intelligence, we are captive in the system. I think that's very clear today. You can see that people are captive. They're not trying to get away. They don't have a real comprehension of what's coming. But when your salience network is working really well, you have foresight, amazing understanding of what's coming. So I am looking for other people with that natural foresight. I got my certification in foresight from University of Houston, and I want to build a group of us that really have this amazingly, because I think we're going to help corporations and people function beautifully in the future if we figure out how to cultivate ourselves. And I think it's something we need to save in our children. I think the salience network should be protected, but in our systems, it is attacked. And is attacked by shame. It is attacked by the attention being externalized according to the system. The system wants to own your attention. It wants to own your focus. They say that ADHD people have broken focus. No, they don't have inattention. They actually have natural focus. They have the kind of focus that is leading to self-protection. There's a lot of PDA and ODD, and I really do think this is going to come out as drapetomania again. They used to call slaves that tried to run away, they called that a dysfunction or a mental illness. I don't think that's a mental illness. If you are a slave and you want to get free, it seems to me like you have some level of natural protection. You're still not so learned helpless that you just given up and you're accepting it. We have changed in the system, so it seems like we have a lot of free will, but they're taking it away mentally. So the truth is we don't. That's showing up right now. They're not trying to figure out how we get in front of change or how we protect ourselves as individuals and our families. They're just sort of accepting that their children are going to have to live under this horrible oppression instead of trying to figure it out. And I'm trying to figure it out in the sense that I'm trying to give my children a space to go to that's safe. If we have 10 years that we have to go through with increasing control, then I need to spend that 10 years on preparing my children for not only navigating that control, but also the release afterwards. Because when the systems fall, it's catastrophic. And it's going to be very bad in this one because we're facing extreme other issues. And when you have those two combinations together, you have a system trying to hold people captive and lock them down. But at the same time, the weather is coming through and breaking that and severing that. You're looking at very severe conditions for the people who don't have a lot of power. So I am trying to garner enough space that my children have the mobility to save themselves in disaster. That's hardly a big thing, but it really is a necessary thing. One of the things is understanding what happened. How did we get here? The system that helps us sort what's going on, understand and discern and figure out what's important, what's valuable, is our salience network. It's our threat detection. It understands the contradiction. It triggers it. Mine is very sensitive. I can't even read our literature on children development. There's bias here. They're saying children who are trying to get through the day are having behavioral issues. Well, they're not behavioral issues. They're actually a child struggling because they're trying to fracture their intelligence, and the child feels it. Most children don't feel it. Most children just give it up, and it's very easy. But the children who have had childhood trauma, the children who are very sensitive, they do feel it. It's torturous. It was torture for me as a child. I was tortured. I learned to sit there and be tortured and not make a peep. In neuroscience, the salience network is around the anterior insula and anterior cingulate cortex. The insula is strongly involved in interoception. It's the sensing of the internal body state. The anterior cingulate helps with action, conflict, error, effort, and adjustment. Together, this network helps us switch the organism to what it needs to respond to. I use the example of the people who are moved to their head so fully that when they were looking at a tidal wave, they couldn't understand what it was because they'd never seen it before. And their body was not going off and saying, move, run, this is bad, this is scary. And your body has a billion-bit channel and it has an amazing calculator. And this is something that I had to learn, that my body's screaming was calculations. I already knew it as a kid, but I didn't realize that other people didn't have it. And I was constantly in conflict with my own body. I hated it. Eating disorders, all of your body dysmorphia, all of these related things of your body being a problem are related to the school system working on this very thing. If you actually taught your children how to use this, they're walking around with genius. That is profound giftedness. It is the ability to realize that this is what they need to survive. This is literally the transition back to figuring out how you navigate your world. I can't turn it off. There's no way to turn it off for me. It will never turn off. All the 2E children, we are creatives. We're supposed to be this way. There are 3 groups of intelligence, and the creatives are the whole picture. The other ones can fracture without as much pain, and they can get comfortable, and the system for them may not be so bad. They might not struggle to stay in it. I am going to struggle to stay in it. My children are going to struggle to stay in it. Children like my children are going to struggle to stay in it. And we have a really specific role. Our role is to prepare the group for change. The DMN, default mode network, is part of my model, but it's not how it works for me. Mine is highly integrated, and I don't even notice my body signals like the heart racing. I notice it after my message has come through. All of the things they're talking about in our system, it's not for us. It's for fragmented somatic people. Creative people have a very different perspective, and we have a very healthy body-to-mind feedback system. The school gets involved with this, mental health gets involved with this, medicine gets involved with it, all to break it. They give us medicine that pushes us in our head. They give us medicine that pushes our body signals down. And I haven't seen a very good track record for people who go on the medicines that push it down, particularly because the medicines that push it down are essentially turning off your connection, your salience network, your ability to realize your body's signals. So your children become kind of muted. It's really horrible because it's hard for those kids to get back off it. For the most part, I'm not a big fan of them because they're dissecting us down and they're actually unaware of the fact that they're causing great harm to our discernment, to our salience network, to our creative intelligence, and it's what we need to survive. So over time, because the child is being told that they can't move, they can't ask, they can't go to the bathroom, and they have to seek the approval of the teacher, they're forced externally to think, they move out of their body, they shut it down. I didn't shut mine down because it wouldn't shut up. That's pre-verbal cognition. That's how we see it. But my pre-verbal cognition didn't shut down. It may have gotten even stronger. Without your pre-verbal cognition, You cannot navigate novel, new. You really do need this as we go into more change. We need this for AI. AI actually is highly manipulative. If this is working for you, you'll know when AI is not right or something's off. So we should really, really be strengthening this in our children because they are going to be facing a world that is going to blow our mind in trial and tribulation. The rewiring that they do is huge. They teach the child to externalize the salience network's purpose. So the alarm bell, the alarm clock, the school bells, those become part of your salience. You externalize it. What your grade is becomes salience. The rubric becomes salience. The test becomes salience. The teacher's mood or how they're like perceiving you is salience. The behavior chart is salience. The threat of shame is salience. And I think the threat of shame may be the biggest thing about this. We are going to have a point now where people who had gotten away in the system by being average and could fit into the mold, which was never me, they are not going to be able to avoid shame. They're going to be shamed because the system's getting so cruel and so extractive. It will shame them no matter what they do. I had to learn that pretty hard, that it didn't matter how much I delivered for my employers, I still got shamed. And the reason for that is the more valuable you are to the employer, the more you're going to get shamed because they need to control you. They don't let the most valuable people up. They let the people who they know what they're going to do, that they're very reliable. But the people they really need, they put more control on. So the children who are really intelligent, really creative, they're the most desirable people in our system because they're the ones who can come up with novel solutions. But our system won't pay for them. They will actually just control them more. We're already seeing it with, this speaking to creative people being more valuable, neurodivergent people being more valuable. Well, these are the last people who are good at staying in controlling situations. And the system's getting more controlling. At the same time, it's requiring these new people. So they're going to do what every fractured person does, which is the need to control increases. If you need somebody, you're going to control them even more. Shame is what they use primarily. Shame hijacks your salience network. So when you're shamed, your environment becomes about survival, about how to stay with the herd. They will give up everything to fit into the group. The natural salience should be like your body's aware. It's environmentally processing the data. It's bringing in your mind and body is having a conversation constantly and it's aware. And that notices the changes. It notices things are off. They talk about autistic people's ability to see things in the environment and attention's pulled to it. You are aware of the root cause and you have consequences that are constantly forming and you're knowing what's coming. You have foresight to some degree. It can be to an extreme degree or it can be to a small degree. And then you notice how things connect. When this happens, they do this. And so you're very good at the patterns of other people. You see them. This is a gift you're giving them. Very few people see each other today. And this is one of the things I look for in my teachers. You have to be able to see the children because these children need to be seen because they see deeply in everyone else and nobody, especially leaders and teachers and coaches and doctors, they don't see them. They just force them to be average. Now, conditioned salience network, it doesn't think about what the child needs. It has internalized the hierarchy of the system, which, by the way, is narcissism. And it's not about connecting with other people. It's about doing what the authority wants. So this is what a lot of people don't know, that fracture and healing is a collapse and renewal. And a lot of people have collapsed and never realized it. And when they do renew, when they have our somatic break, the shame levels that our society is going to have is going to be incredible. Shame makes you want to jump off a cliff. I hate to say it this way, but it does. It's that profound of a feeling. And when it comes in spirals, it's really uncomfortable. And a lot of people are going to experience that now, and they are not going to be able to handle it, and it's going to be horrible. And part of the reason I'm doing this is because they need somebody to teach them how to get through it. We're going to have a shame epidemic. Shame can be a really powerful thing if you learn how to use it, but it is really hard. The body's feelings are intense. They are going to try to keep themselves from shame. That's what conditioned salience does. When more people experience that, it's going to feel like, I can't do this. And it really is the right thing to feel. Your body is trying to say, this environment's very toxic, get out. But we're not allowed. We're taught to be resilient, get through it. I don't see that as resilient. That's a big thing about the conditioned salience. You lose your free will. You're waiting to be told what to do next. There is no one that's going to tell you what to do next as we get further into this. You have to figure it out yourself. There are no saviors. We have this narrative of a savior in our system. Understand that this is your job to save yourself. The school damages our connection intelligence because it doesn't just give it bad information, but it's literally conditioning it to feel anxiety and anger and frustration and like attack people who are whole, who are healthy. I have been attacked by so many adults as a child, and I was like, gosh, I must really be a horrible person. But it wasn't that I was a horrible person, because I actually went back and asked people I went to high school with, like, was I mean? What was up with me? And they're like, no, you were the sweetest person. What actually was going on was like the teachers just didn't like you. Yeah, I knew that. And it was just that I maintained my natural intelligence. I maintained my integration, and that so many people are conditioned to it, particularly in the helping industries. They're very conditioned against that. I get seen as a person who is wrong, but nobody will tell me why I'm wrong. It's just I'm irritating them, I'm frustrating them, because I need greater depth. So school damages your connection-based intelligence. It rewires how you see other people. It rewires the need to approve, be approved of, and be good and fit into the system. As we get further into this, it's going to be very, very dangerous for you. So please consider how we save this in our children. Children learn to feel urgency, anxiety around deadlines, around grades, approval. I mean, these are really strong. I used to feel like my stomach was going to eat my insides right out. I couldn't even feel my hunger. I couldn't feel my fatigue. Moral alarm is actually lost, which is something we should be really concerned about, because people are doing horrible things to other people already, and it's only going to increase. And then environmental mismatch. Environments are good for you. Instead of us being taught like, yeah, this isn't going to work, you're taught to deep breathe. You're taught to take some drugs. You're taught to do CBT. All of those things are actually working against your highest functioning intelligence. When they're talking about nervous system, they're just talking about your intelligence. This is just about your whole intelligence. Your body is your primary intelligence, believe it or not. It's a billion-bit channel. It's 100 times million more processing of data than your head. When you open up your body intelligence, all of a sudden the world makes sense. Everything is very clear. When it's not, what happens is your body sets up a signal of awareness, fear, and your head says, you're not allowed to do that. Stop. And you attack your own body. If your body sets up a signal of concern, your head is like, stop being that way. Stop being childish. The whole idea of maturity is really the death of your body intelligence. There's not really maturity in our system. It's zombieism. I actually think this is what the zombie metaphor is talking about. It's the death of your body's intelligence. This is the destruction of your mind-body feedback loop. Your salience network is your cerebellar network. It's part of your creative intelligence, and it's part that does the discernment. It's the part that determines what's important, what comes up from your body. And if you break that enough, you lose cause and effect, and you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off, and the emotions are still coming. Those emotions don't quiet down. It's not like you shut them up. You just can't interpret them. So then you are lost. You are struggling profoundly. All right, everybody, that's it for the podcast. If you're interested in learning more, because I have tons more, this is a tiny amount, you can check me out on my website, giftednd.com. That's gifted, Gifted, nd.com for neurodevelopment or neurodivergent, whichever you want. And I also have my institute at www.creativeintelligentinstitute.ca, because it's in Canada. And if you want to learn more, sign up for a creative collective. We have a creative collective that meets once a month. And our goal is to cultivate our creative intelligence, understand it better, cultivate each other, and market for each other. It is free. There's no cost for it. It's just a bunch of us getting together, kind of sharing what we're working on, what we're doing, how we move through the world as a creative, how it's different, talking about things that they've figured out, got themselves healthy, and get their body's feedback system. It is amazing because it's everybody who has really high sensitivity. Instead of telling their doctor about it and their doctor writing a paper on it, we are now just doing that ourselves. We've cut out the middleman. Our entire system has been set up so that we tell our doctor and then they get a paper and they're the ones that the expert. When truly, naturally, the sensitive people have always been the ones who discern and understand the whole system. Our system has cut out most of our intelligence and then called it not real, so it could just cover one. As a result, everybody in our system is dissecting down only, and they do not know how to connect, and they do not know how to create. And now we have a machine that does what they do. Now, I don't want to say that our professionals are valueless. They still have value, but they aren't helping me understand my connection and creation intelligence. The creatives leave first because of this very reason. We didn't fit into the categories. We're not average enough. We weren't served. We were actually serving everybody else and paying to do so. And so now we're going to go do our own thing over here, figure it out for ourselves. We have to learn to trust ourselves. That's the natural way. That's how we navigate. And that is what the world is requiring. Thank you for listening. Take care, everyone. Have a good day. content of this podcast is for general education and informational purposes only and is not professional advice of any kind. The host is an intelligence researcher and educator, not a licensed psychologist, psychiatrist, counselor, or any other mental health clinician. Nothing in this podcast is intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any mental health conditions, nor does it establish as a therapist, client, or doctor-patient relationship. This podcast may discuss psychological concepts and may disagree with or critique prevailing clinical or professional viewpoints. Those discussions are academic commentary, not individualized guidance. Reliance on any information from this podcast is at the listener's own discretion and risk. Copyright use of content. Unless otherwise stated, all podcast content, including audio recordings, transcripts, episode notes, frameworks, original terms, and other materials, is copyrighted and owned by myself, Lillian Skinner, and the podcast rights holder. No portion may be copied, reproduced, republished, distributed, transmitted, publicly performed, displayed, modified, excerpted beyond brief quotations, or used to create derivative works without prior written permission, except where permitted by applicable law. Requests for permission, licensing, or citation quotation guidelines should be directed to me, Lillian Skinner, the host and producer. Unauthorized use may result in takedown requests and/or legal action.